that Councilmember Lee is not joining us tonight. So previously, at the council's May 28th meeting, a candidate profile for the next city manager was adopted by the council. At the same meeting, the council decided to move forward with an interview of the acting city manager for the permanent role before determining whether to conduct a national search, which is what brings us here today. The sole purpose of today's meeting is to give the council the opportunity to interview our acting city manager, Diane Carlson. Today's one-hour interview will include 7 questions to be asked of Ms. Carlson. Each council member here will ask 1 to 2 questions, and if time allows, 2 additional questions have been provided that may be asked. Follow-up questions to Ms. Carlson's responses should only be asked by a council member if clarification is needed. HR Director Joy St. Germain will serve as our timekeeper so that we can conclude promptly at 5 o'clock. There will be no opportunity for public comment at this meeting. However, the council will take public comment at our regular meeting, which will begin later this evening at 6 o'clock in council chambers. And of course, anybody can email us at, council@bellevuewa.gov. No final decision on the hiring of the next city manager will be made today. We are here only to conduct the formal interview of Ms. Carlson. Following today's interview, I want to draw special attention to the 2 public forums that have been set up for later this week, where acting city manager Carlson will respond to interview questions submitted by the community. The forums will take place in council chambers on Thursday, September 12th at 3 p.m. and Saturday, September 14th at noon, and each will be recorded and broadcast via channel 21 and live streamed via Bellevue's YouTube TV channel. After each forum, the community will be asked to submit feedback on comment cards on Ms. Carlson. The feedback will be compiled by HR staff and provided to the council after both forums have concluded. Again, no final decision will be made today. We anticipate that a discussion and decision on whether to move forward with an appointment or to conduct further candidate search steps will be made at a regular council meeting within the next few weeks. Finally, I want to give a quick reminder that today's special meeting is being conducted in a hybrid manner, consistent with a regular council meeting, and is being broadcast via Channel 21 and live streamed via Bellevue's YouTube TV. With that, I will invite Ms. Carlson to the table, and I will turn it to Deputy Mayor Malakutian, who will be asking Ms. Carlson the first and second question of the interview.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Carlson, hi. How are you?
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for prepping for this interview while you're managing our city, so I appreciate that. My first question is, please describe your leadership style and how you motivate your team to achieve organizational goals.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malakutian, Mayor Robinson, Councilmember Zahn, Councilmember Newhouse, Councilmember Stokes, and Councilmember Hamilton. So I first want to say, before I jump into the first question, if you don't mind, that I really appreciate today. I have been looking forward to this week to have this opportunity to talk with you about my experiences as a city employee, my experiences as a resident, my experiences working in government in this community and in this region, and how it benefits the city, and why I'm passionate about this position.
I am sorry. Mr. Zimmerman, please do not disrupt the meeting. That's a warning. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem.
Thank you very much, my friend.
So I appreciate the opportunity, and I also want to thank you for the chance to be the acting city manager for the last 9 months. So to your question, my leadership style, I would characterize my leadership style as collaborative, thoughtful, action-oriented, very focused on taking information in, but making decisions based on that information and in a timely manner. And the way that I use that or apply my leadership style to helping to align the organization behind your objectives and your priorities and your goals is that I approach the leadership team and I approach the staff with a perspective of great amount of trust and respect for them. I I'm very focused on listening and asking questions. They will, if you ask them, tell you that I ask a lot of questions. And that's to help me understand what they are working on and how they're working on it and what their perspectives are. I also would say that I have been focused, particularly in the last couple of years since I've been here, on helping to guide the organization to alignment. So working on the strategic framework has been a big component of how I've approached this position since I came back to the city, the deputy manager position and the acting city manager position, which is to have the organization really bring together our strategic plans, our action plans, and align them with your vision and your strategic target areas so that and create objectives. And that is a big part of how we're organizing the budget this year. So my leadership style, to me, it's very important that we have the ability to communicate throughout the organization what objectives we're seeking to achieve on behalf of the council and your priorities and your vision. And that communication needs to occur throughout the organization. So from our leadership team throughout to all employees. And it's helpful as a one city approach as well, that we're all aligned and we have some work to do to continue to make that stronger, and our leadership team is focused on that. But that, again, comes back to my style is that leadership style and approach is that I want to hear from our leadership team. I want to hear from our employees because they're the experts in many of the things that we do and the services that we provide. And I'm open to listening to that and to their ideas.
Thank you so much for a very complete answer. The second question that I have is, what strategies would you implement to enhance Bellevue's regional and state influence and position Bellevue as a policy leader and collaborator?
Okay, that is a great question. I know that it's been a high priority for the council for many, many years. And in fact, when I was here earlier in the early 2000s, it was something that the city was really invested in, being a regional leader and having influence in the region and at the state level. And I know that it's important to this council as well. So I will start that answer by saying that I believe that Bellevue is a leader and a regional leader and an innovator, and has great influence in this region. And that's partly because of the vision and the priorities that this council has set and the other councils have set before you, and the willingness to stick to those priorities and carry them out sometimes over years. And so the ability to set some priorities and to work through those priorities over many years has led to great success of this city, I think, particularly if you look in the areas of how we planned for growth. So Bellevue was a leader in designating a corridor for the light rail to travel through, and there was a lot of community involvement, engagement, and difficult conversations and negotiations in doing that. And the council at that time also planned for the growth in Belred, and you're doing it again, right? So creating a transit-oriented development that much before many of the other communities in this region have done it. So in that sense, this council and this city has been a leader. This city has most recently, and you've been part of that, shown leadership in creating a transit unit for light rail. It's something that I believe other cities will also emulate. So you've got the CCAT program that also was among the first in this region. So there are many, many ways that this council and this city is a regional leader. And how can we continue to grow that and expand it? I worked a lot at King County, both, well, as the government relations manager here, director here, and also at King County with all of the jurisdictions across King County. So how to create relationships and partnerships that continue to grow our regional influence, that's something this council is pretty well practiced in. I think we can continue to expand that. I think that this council also can be, and the staff can work to target those relationships, really specifically identify which are the regional and local organizations where you can lean into being a leader and can create the partnerships with the other governments, if that's necessary, to grow our influence in those areas. And then we also need to make sure that we're supporting the region and the goals that our partners have as well. So those are the areas that I would say that we can continue to work on, is how do we support the whole region in the goals and outcomes that the region has, but also, and that's the leaning in part, and sometimes it will mean taking some risks, which this city is also very practiced at doing, taking balanced risks to be a leader in the region.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Joy, can you scoot over one seat? Because if you put a little card up, I'm not going to see it. Councilmember Newhouse.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane, for being here this afternoon. My question is about through your career, and an extensive and impressive one that it is. So think of 3 colleagues that you've worked closely with over your career with varying impressions of your leadership. So one with the best impression, one with the worst impression, and then the third with the most balanced perspective. So describe briefly those 3 people's impression and explain why they formed those impressions.
This was a very interesting question. I thought about it long and hard about how to respond to this question, simply because it's not the usual feedback that I've received, right? So from a specific individual and then what their impression was. So I'd like to address it differently, which is how I have evolved in my leadership over time, which means a lot of learning and growth. I kind of went through in question 1 how I characterize my leadership style. I would say as I have matured and gotten more experience in being a leader, people have described me more as really being authentic. And that's something that I am really happy to have gotten to a point where I can be authentic in my leadership style. So if you were looking for, hey, that one really means a lot to me. So that perspective from people that I've worked with, people that have worked for me, that I can be approachable and authentic is something that I really value. As I have grown in my career, one of the things that I have improved upon is the ability to make decisions with the amount of information that's available at the time. So that's something that probably I wasn't so well practiced at early in my career. And I think that comes with experience, being in multiple experiences across lots of different organizations and issues that I've dealt with. Being able to take the information, know and have a kind of an intuitive feel about what information is available, what information you need to make a decision, what information can you get in the time that you have available to you. So that's something that I would kind of put in the middle, is like, this is something that I didn't, probably wasn't as well practiced at in the middle part of my career, that I have learned and grown into. And then the third one, which might be the kind of the thing that is also I wasn't as good at the beginning, and I'm continuing to work on it. And I would say for all of these, I continue to work on how to improve my leadership skills, and I learn from other people all the time, mentors, staff, leadership team members. The third thing is clarity, so being clear in directions. I like to collaborate, which means I also like to seek people's ideas, and I like to go ask them to go and think about it and to bring back things. And I want to continue to strive to be clear about who's doing what and giving directions. So that would be the third one, which is probably the least, the thing that it was least well formed, and I continue to work on.
Thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yes, describe the council-initiated program you've implemented and the steps you took to assign staff, a budget, and a timeline.
Okay, great question. And I have a couple of examples, but I'll start with general approach. So pretty much everything that we do, the council has initiated, right, through the budget process. Sometimes initiatives we bring to you through the budget process. And if we are coming up with an idea or implementing a council-initiated initiative, the first thing that I would think to do is to identify who's our lead, who's the natural lead within the organization to start evaluating, gathering information about the initiative, right? What's the potential scope? We would work with them to identify who else needs to be involved in this, because there's rarely an issue that only has one department involved. So I'd be working with them, or a deputy would be working with that lead to figure out who needs to be involved at the beginning. And then that team, that individual lead or the team, would identify what's the scope of the resources that are needed, that's people resources, dollar resources, and develop a general timeline. So going from timeline, that would include a schedule and some milestones. So going from the general to some specifics, I want to talk a little bit about the Grand Connection Crossing as something that the council initiated years ago, but had been being worked on, had not been put forward as something that could be moved forward for many years. So when I came to the city a couple years ago, there had been some conversations about what are the next steps? How do we get this crossing started and moving towards a reality? This one is one that we worked on before the budget. So in developing the budget, we worked with some of the partners, our private partners, to identify, well, what would be the next step? And that was, we need to start on a design project, right? So if we can pool our funding to move the design forward, that's the first step. And that's what we brought to you in the budget, was CIP project that would cover the design, first 30% of the design. Following the council approval of that budget, we did exactly what I just described, only on a bigger scale, right? So we identified a lead in community development. That lead developed a whole team of people throughout the organization in the multiple departments that would need to be involved in that initiative. So development services, transportation, community development, our land use team, our facilities and asset management team. So, and then they also developed a very complicated, complex schedule, right, with some milestones. And that kicked off the project shortly after the budget, or the first of the year. And we are on track to bring back the 30% design to you this year, which was what the goal was. So that's that is one example. The second example I wanted to talk a little bit about was the safe parking program. That came from the council, so that was initiated by the council in the budget process. And similarly, we identified a lead within our outreach team. in the city manager's office who identified a team of people that would be necessary to help scope out the project, identify a location, and develop, use the council budget that you allocated to develop a more detailed budget for it, and a timeline. That one hit a few bumps because we needed to secure a partner to do that, and it took a couple of times to get it. So our timeline needed to be adjusted, but we continued and have a successful safe parking program now that will be bringing back the results of that to the council and seeking extension in the upcoming budget.
Thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Diane. Can you please share examples of how you've actively fostered diversity, equity, and inclusion in your most recent role? And what areas of DEI would you like to explore for your personal growth?
Thank you. Also a very good question. I'm going to step back and tell you a little bit about where I came from, where I grew up, because I think it's good context here. So I'm an Olympia kid, grew up in Olympia, in a rural part of Thurston County. Not a lot of diversity, and didn't really experience much diversity, cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, until I was an adult, frankly, and went off to college and started working. So my own personal learning on diversity, equity, and inclusion really came as I was much more of, an older adult. And it took a lot of reading on my part. So reading books, taking trainings through work on my own, and listening and learning and understanding what my own unconscious biases are and how to listen without judgment and to really listen for people's experiences and how they are and were different from mine. Taking that and then also understanding how our systems might create biases was another big part of me learning as a leader and a public employee for sure. As I have matured that and understood it more, coming here, I brought with me that training and learning and applied it to the city of Bellevue, which had a DEI program when I got here. That DEI program is more robust and more integrated into the organization now than it was even 2 years ago when I started. And I believe it will continue to be more integrated through the organization. And it's very, very important to me. It's very important to this organization. It's very important to this community that we continue to learn from what we're doing, learn from our community about how we can ensure that we are being inclusive and that we are being equitable because of our community being so diverse. So some of the things that I have been part of implementing or part of championing here at the city for the last couple of years and in my current role. We have a budget equity tool that you'll learn about that is something that we talked to the council about the last biennial budget. And this year we were able to, starting last year, we were able to develop it and put it to use as part of this budget cycle. That's one big step. We also have staff training that I have been supportive of throughout the organization on microaggressions, and we will continue to develop our DEI training. We and I have been have had a large interest in broadening our engagement approaches so that we are reaching more of the community that we typically don't reach or haven't reached in the past, and that might be going to where they are. It might be improving our language access tools. It might be just inviting them, becoming more welcoming to the community that is not used to working with the government or our government in particular. I'm also very happy to say that our leadership team this year developed a 6th core value for the organization, which is the DEI core value. So that was a big and important step for the leadership team and for the organization to do that, to help us, again, integrate DEI throughout all that we do. And then the last thing, the personal side, what do I want to continue to focus on? It's how to use the information that we're able to gather and data to evaluate our programs and our services to make sure that we are applying our resources equitably and that we are reaching the community that is so diverse here in Bellevue.
Okay, so from public relations to public safety, how will you prevent situations from becoming a crisis?
Great question, and I wish I had a foolproof answer to that one, because I think, we've been very good. Part of it is, I'll go back to the leadership style. So I'm going to start with the prevention as much as possible, right? So being approachable as a leader is one thing that I think is helpful for prevention. And by that I mean that the leaders and the staff in the organization can bring things to me and identify when we might have something coming that is something that we don't want to happen, and we can talk about how to prevent it or how to deal with it, how to address it. So that's finding the blind spots, if possible, before they occur. Now, of course, that's not possible in some cases, right? There are a lot of things that happen in a city. And so the first thing that I would do to avoid an issue or an incident becoming a crisis or more of a crisis would be to rely on our great leaders in the departments. They are the experts. They are the most knowledgeable in that, if you're talking about a police incident for certain, they're the most knowledgeable people about how to handle the incident or the issue and how to handle it well to try to avoid having it become a bigger incident or issue. I would say that we also try to plan ahead. So we look at things, we think about what might happen, we plan for those. Again, in the first responder departments, they're well practiced in planning ahead for events and trying to game plan what might happen and then how we might respond. On the communications side, we would probably, and we do look at what are our methods of responding, what are our tools for responding, who should be responding, who's the best to respond, and that might be a department, it might be a staff person, it might be council, it might be the city manager. Whether we should be proactive, whether we should be reactive. Sometimes you don't get a choice about whether you're proactive or reactive, but thinking through how you approach it. And then the communication should be honest, should be accurate. It should be transparent, as transparent as possible and as clear as possible. And again, I think we have very good and practiced communication staff and experts who help design how we do those responses on the communication side. But I'll go back to the kind of the first question is how do we prevent a crisis, and that's prevention, right? Prevention and being ready for as many potential situations as we can plan for.
Thank you. Councilmember Hamilton.
Just had to write that down. In the past 8 months, you have served as the acting city manager. Please share your observations about what is working well and what areas there are for improvement to achieve future goals.
This is a great question. I have grown and learned a lot in the 9 months that I've been doing it. And I'll start with what's going well, is that I believe that we have been able to advance the council's priorities. So that's the first thing. And to me, one of the most important, once you get beyond just simply providing great service to the community, right? So that's our base and the thing that we need to do well all the time. But what is going well is, as I said, lining up what we do to the council priorities and the council vision, and having a strategic plan for how we are going to advance those priorities. So that's going well in a number of areas. On our housing, affordable housing strategic plan, so we've made a number of advancements and actually are coming back to you with a next step in that plan. So what are the next steps we're going to take? And housing is also an area that we know we need to continue to do more of, affordable housing and just simply housing in general. And the council's going to be taking a look at that with the comprehensive plan later this evening. That comprehensive plan is the next step forward for this city, right? So I was here in 2000, 2010. The city has grown significantly since that time, and that was a result of the comprehensive plan at the time saying we're going to have this growth corridor, we are going to be a growth city, and we're going to be a metropolitan city. And now we're about ready to take another step forward, should the council approve this comprehensive plan, to set the next vision, the next 20-year vision for the growth of this city. So that is a fantastic opportunity for this city, and it's some great challenges and some hard work that will come with that. So that's an area we've done great in achieving our growth plans, and it's going to be a challenge for us to make sure that we continue to grow gracefully, that we grow with great plans in place to support the infrastructure that's needed to grow well, to support our services that are needed with the additional growth. So that's going to be something that we will need as an organization, and the council support, and to work with the council on making sure that we have those good plans in place for the next 10 and 20 years. Another area that has been going well, as I just articulated in one of the DEI question, but another area that I think is an opportunity for the city and a challenge for the city is how we ensure that we are accessible as a city government to a community that is as diverse and multicultural as we are. We have made great strides in that, and we need to continue to do that well, and to continue to invite people in and to welcome them, and to make sure that our services are geared to reaching them in a way that they are able to access our services. So I think that's a challenge for us and an opportunity as well to be a leader as a city in doing that. Arts and culture and the facilities that support that, gathering places, I'll put those in kind of a similar category. That's something that the city, as we become more of an urbanized city and a more populated city and a more multicultural city, it's something that we have to incorporate into our growth planning as well. So how do we move from being that a suburban residential city and an employment center to a city that creates opportunities and locations and venues for our population to celebrate and engage and work together as a cross-cultural, if you have it, cross-cultural venues. So those are some of the things that are, I think, on the public side and the council priority side. As an organization, we need to be making sure that we are planning for the growth as well. So our services need to keep up with the growth. Our facilities, our government facilities, also need to keep up with the growth. And that's a long-term planning exercise that I'm looking forward to doing. I think that we have great building blocks in place to do that, and we need to pull them together and really articulate and plan for what that requires in terms of our employee population, whether we need new infrastructure and facilities, which we likely will, and also what our revenues will be needed to support that in the future.
Thank you. Well, we're doing really well with time. Thank you, everybody. This week, you have kind of answered this question, but I'm going to ask Councilmember Hamilton to ask question number 8.
How have you tailored your communication strategies to effectively communicate with different stakeholders, such as city staff, community groups, and businesses?
Also a good question, and I would say all of the methods possible, right? So email is something that we use a lot, externally and internally. So with community groups, with individual members of the community, internally with our city staff. We use the blog post, or we use blog and social media on our external communications. Press releases, press statements, interviews, and in-person meetings. So pretty much every type of communication method, we attempt to use it, and I have attempted to use it. I personally like in-person communication as much as possible. That's not always possible, but that's my preferred method. So meeting with community members, community groups, meeting with council members, having conversations with you all, staff meetings, and in person with individual groups across the organization. So it's had to be tailored. It has to be tailored depending on the subject and also the timeliness, right, of how quickly you need to get something out and how detailed it needs to be.
Okay, Councilmember Zahn, would you ask question number 9, please?
Yes. All right, Diane. Can you please share examples of innovative practices or processes you've implemented to improve city operations? And then how did these changes impact efficiency or service delivery?
I will let you tell me whether or not you think they're innovative, but I'd like to bring up a couple of examples of changes that have addressed our service delivery and service issues that have been brought to us by the community. So the first one relates to our homeless camps and how we were approaching the camp removal process. So we had it distributed throughout the organization, and that sometimes took more time and more resources than was probably necessary. So we take a very compassionate approach to that, but also want to make sure that we are addressing the encampment depending on where it's at, and so sometimes we need it to be removed quickly. What we did to approach changing how we did it was to consolidate into one responsible party, working with all the departments to do it. And that has resulted in much more efficient ways inside the organization to address it, and more consistency in the organization with addressing it. The second one is a very internal process, which was the council look ahead and agenda planning. So, and I'm going to caveat all of these by saying that these don't, I didn't do these are things that the staff works on under our leadership to do, so it couldn't be done without the staff. And in this case, it's the clerk's office. But identifying that we had a process that relied on email frequently for developing council materials for the agenda, and they worked with the IT department, they worked with us and the departments to design a process that was much more automated and allows less email traffic and much more the ability for the departments to load in and request meeting dates, and it has just given us a much better ability to look forward at what's coming with the council and to be more proactive about planning the agendas and ensuring that we have good use of your time and that the staff is also planning appropriately for the timeliness that's needed for the agenda materials. So those are two. And then the third one, again, not necessarily innovative, but quick to a response that we hadn't thought about before, and that's one that Councilmember Newhouse brought up, which was our grocery cart pickup, right? So something that had been a challenge for a while that we hadn't addressed, and it was simply a matter of identifying what potential tool is out there to get the carts picked up and to contract with a vendor to do it. And that's something that is an ongoing process. It's something that we'll continue to look at and evaluate how it's going. But it resolved a long-standing challenge that we moved on pretty quickly to do.
Great. So we have time for two more questions. I'm going to invite Councilmember Newhouse and Councilmember Stokes. If you have any follow-up questions you'd like to ask, you may do so. Otherwise, we will conclude the interview.
Mr. Stokes, want to go first?
Okay. Thank you. How do you feel in terms of the communications between your office and the council and with the different directors' offices? What's your perception of how this is going and what you've done to make it that way?
So communication between our office and the council, I will always say communication, we can always get better, right? So I feel very comfortable with the ability to communicate with you each individually. I like the fact that I can call you and talk to you about issues and alert you of issues individually. I think the department directors, you have access to the department directors as well to ask questions of them and for them to provide information back to you. That's something that I think, again, I want to continue to work with the council on what's the best approach for you individually and collectively. We're here to support you and to ensure that you, as you're doing your job as a council member, have the information that you need and that we're getting it to you in a timely manner, and that, frankly, I'm responsible for ensuring that all of you get the information, get the same information, right, as you know, on as similar a timeline as we can possibly make happen. So I believe it's good, but that really, I'm open to the feedback from you about how it's working for you, and we'll want to continue to work on making changes if that's needed and appropriate for the council members.
Thank you.
Councilmember Newhouse.
Thank you. My question is regarding, and you've been in that acting position already, so I'll just have to tweak it a little bit. But I'm just wondering, how will you approach, I guess, pivoting from acting if you were selected as full-time city manager? Is your approach going to be the same? Will it be a little bit different? And what does that first 60 days look like for you?
Oh, great question. I have tried to approach the acting position as much as in as similar a manner as being in the position as possible. I know there are constraints to the acting, particularly in terms of hiring some of our full-time positions or our regular positions in the leadership positions. So there's at least one position. So in the first 60 days, if I were to get the permanent position, I would move on that, filling that position permanently, department director position. And I think it's necessary to have a permanent city manager before you can do that. How I will approach it, the first 60 days, frankly, is going to be very focused on how do we implement the budget. And in the budget, we are going to be, I'm giving you a little preview of next week. In the budget, we will be identifying a few areas of the organization that we want to focus on making some improvements. And that is going to take some effort from our department directors, our leadership team, and certainly from me as the city manager, if I were the city manager. So that's something that I think we have made some strides on in streamlining and focusing our efforts and aligning what we're doing on our action plans. And as the organization moves towards more transparency and more accountability and data, getting more business intelligence systems across the organization, that leads us to be a more learning organization, and that's something that I'm pretty passionate about. It's going to take us a little while to do it, but the kickoff of that comes within the next 60 days after budget, right? So we need the budget approval to do that. But I would be focused on that. And then we have so many initiatives and land use code issues that we want to deal with and make sure that we're working with the community on as if you approve the comprehensive plan. That is an area that's of high interest to our community, and I think it's going to take some attention from the city manager's office and the city manager.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Terrific. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. As I stated previously, there is no final decision that's going to be made today. However, it is anticipated that a discussion and decision on whether to move forward with an appointment or not to will conduct, or not to conduct further candidate search steps will be made at a regular council meeting within the next few weeks. And this concludes our special meeting. We'll now adjourn, and we'll begin our regular meeting in council chambers at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you very much.